What do Van Morrison, Cat Stevens, and Neil Young all have in common? Well, yes, they're all in their late 70s, but apart from that, they all played BST Hyde Park in London on the same day and were bloomin' marvellous. That's my easy review done right there, but if you want to know more, and I hope you do, come right this way and I will fill you in. Hey, welcome, I'm Joe, or JSB, and I'm a music fan. Indeed, I've been one for so long that I first saw one of these artists when I was only 8 years old, where he famously stormed off the stage after 5 songs, but I'll get to that. I would call myself a fan of all three of these artists to a greater or lesser degree, but this was my first time seeing two of them, and the first time after a 36-year gap. You do the math for the other guy. And not to put too fine a point on it, with legends dropping like flies in recent years, in fact, in recent days, it really seemed like a bill I couldn't possibly miss, even if they are not perhaps entirely natural bedfellows, but there are enough connections to make the whole thing hang together. Now, this, for those who don't know, BST Hyde Park, this is a big outdoor concert, and if you've never been to London in the summer, it tends to do one of two things: pelt down with rain or be unbearably hot. Neither is a great option, to be fair, and on this occasion it was about as hot gets here, which is to say over 30 degrees Celsius, or to put it in terms my American friends will understand, yeah, you have to melt your face off, basically. Now, I had what they call a golden circle ticket, so I must have been feeling rich when I booked that. Heavens. Basically, you get a space at the front of the stage with about 2,000 or 3,000 capacity, which is not bad when the crowd's, what, 65,000 or so, I'm told. And you get a wristband so you can come and go out of that area as you please. Be handy for a solo gig goer like me on this occasion. Now, the downside is, and this is true of the whole place anyway, there's only a tiny bit of shade in there. And that's where you'll find me. At that point, you're not super close to the stage, you're not right up the front, but you've got a decent view of both the actual stage and the big screens, and it's pretty decent. And the sound is good. In fact, this year for all three acts, the sound was perfect. Well, apart from a couple of glitches at the start and end of the headline set, but I will come to that as well. And that's far from a guarantee at an event of this size and nature. So props to the sound team. Nice job. Now, this gig wasn't that long ago, just under a fortnight as I'm recording this, but I've had a lot on in between, hence me not getting to it sooner. So I'm going to head over to setlist.com and we'll use the set list there to jog my memory of the sets and the day, starting with Fan the Man. Alrighty, so I'm not sure if you can see, but start time here is not incorrect. That is 4:45 p.m. that Van came on stage, because this was an event going up right up, in fact, to 10:30 in the evening. And he came out bang on time. It was blue and hot. They even had gazebos on stage for his band and himself, or some of his band. A couple of them were out under the full blazing sun and sweating profusely, as you would. Speaking of the band, I'm not sure if any of the players in there, but fantastic lineup. A four-piece brass section, and Van was on sax on a few tracks as well. And I used to play saxophone, and that used to make me hot in any conditions. So I don't know how they do it, quite frankly. They are superhuman, to my mind. But on top of that, great pianist, female, I was going to call her backing singer, but she was much, much more than that. And bass playing guitars, probably. Yeah, we'll say they were. So as you see, here with Into the Mystic, great opener. I did hear an American in the audience complaining later on that it took 45 minutes for him to play anything I knew. Who does he think he is, Bob Dylan? We'll get to what he obviously knew first. But it was a long wait, I have to say, after Into the Mystic for me to hear anything recognizable. Next up was Cutting Corners, which he introduced as the current single, though that's a thing. And that sounded great. Hearing all these songs that followed that I wasn't familiar with, wondered if he was playing a chunk of his new album, but it turns out that no, Cutting Corners was actually the only track from it. Anyway, I might not have known these songs, but damn, it was all good. Kind of more jazzy than anything else, but a little bit of blues in there as well. Not much in the way of rock or pop, but who cares? And everyone sounded great. Van's voice was spot on. I mean, at 79, I didn't know what to expect from him. And, you know, Van's got a reputation of being a bit of a grumpy old sod. But no sign of that on this occasion. He seemed in good spirits. He was joking with his band. Didn't say much to the crowd, but yeah, he seemed in a good mood. And as I say, in damn fine voice. Now, Nighttime is the Right Time was the next song that I knew, but not from him. I was, the Ray Charles and CCR versions of that song, but again, really tight playing with the band and call and response vocals with the female singer. And then a little bit later, we get to Wild Night, which is the one everybody knew. One of his best known songs back from the early 70s. And a couple of songs about God, which you kind of expect from Van. And again, Whenever God Shines His Light was a pretty big hit for him in the UK, at least, if not elsewhere. And originally was a duet with Cliff Richard, which always makes it a bit meh for me. But again, his female singer took on Cliff's parts and vast improvement. Yeah. And Summertime in England. My goodness, I'm not familiar with this song. It's from the Common One album, which came out the same year I did, 1980. And the studio version is about 15 minutes long. I don't know how long this version was. I wasn't timing anything. It didn't feel super long to me. So I'd be interested to know how long it did cover, because I was into it from note one to the end. Fantastic. And Van sort of wandered off towards the end of it, off stage. And he wondered if he was coming back, and he did, with harmonica in tow for, as you see here, Gloria. And that was, again, extended and spectacular. Though again, Van wandered off and just left his band to play for the last 4 or 5 minutes and didn't come back to say thank you or good night or take a bow or any of that stuff. But great ending just the same, and a fantastic first set. I've liked Van for a long time without ever being a super fan. I've got his best of and a couple of the other albums. So, and I've had opportunities to see him over the years and thought, don't know. Really glad I saw him, and now I would not miss a beat and seen a full set from him given the chance. So great stuff. Next up, I've been calling him Cat Stevens, and he does bill himself these days as Yusuf / Cat Stevens, but Setlist FM has gone with Yusuf Islam only, which means that in the list of songs, almost all of them are described as Cat Stevens songs, and you don't therefore get a list of which albums the tracks are from. But a good half of the set came from his two absolute classics, Tea for the Tillman and Teaser and the Firecat from 70 and 71, respectively. Speaking of Tea for the Tillman, he had a slightly odd opening to his set. He kind of walked out on stage, pointed to the big screens behind him, and an animation played to the title track of that album, which is, if you know it, not quite a minute long. And then once that was over, he came back out with the band and then started the set properly with, as you see, The Wind, which opens Teaser and the Firecat, and is just again, super short song, not even 2 minutes long, but beautiful, and sounded almost like the studio version. Cat's voice has, of course, aged the 50-something years between recording and this particular show, but he still sounds good. I mean, like Van, he works with what he's got, and he does it well. He's got a real added warmth to his voice that's developed over the years, I think. So good stuff there. And then we follow up with Sitting, which is probably one of his less remembered hits these days, but that's from Catchpole at 4 and a favourite of mine, so I was very happy to have that in the set. Now, this is where he started to show that he was the perfect bridge between Van Morrison and Neil Young, because you can kind of see the acoustic side of Neil shines with Cat, even if the the grunge heavy noise stuff really, really doesn't. But how does Van link to either of them? Well, he plays Midday, Avoid City After Dark, which was from his first secular Yusuf album in 2005 or 6, Another Cup. It's the opener from that. And he said this was inspired by that, and you can kind of see how they were at one point kind of contemporaries as well in the mid-60s pop world. Hard to think of them as being pop artists in that sense, but they very much were. Band with them, and Cat in his early teenage pop star days. Speaking of which, we didn't really get any of those songs. Matthew and Son, Here Comes My Baby, I'm Going to Get Me Gun, that sort of thing. But from that era, we did get the first cut as The Deepest, which of course is much more famous from cover versions done by others. But I still think Cat's version is the best. Again, a nice one to hear. So you can see he's mixing up the hits with some deeper cuts, even if they're from the big albums. So a couple of my favorites from Tiller Man, Miles from Nowhere, and On the Road to Find Out, which he did in a kind of a more bluesy style. It was a vastly different arrangement from the original, and he played it to as much as anything to promote his forthcoming memoir, which is called Cat on the Road to Find Out, which he said would talk about all the things people have got wrong about him over the years, as well as some of the things they got right. So I think that will make for an interesting read. In between those, Moonshadow, and that's one of those sing-along songs that got everybody happy. Now, following the bluesy On the Road to Find Out, he did a proper blues song with Big Boss Man. So, there's variety with what Cat does as well. And then things took a turn, not for the worse, just for the more, how can I put this, political, I suppose. Where Did the Children Play? A classic, and The Little Ones, not a classic, but a great song. Both connected to current wars, particularly Palestine, of course, and Ukraine, but mainly Palestine. But The Little Ones was originally written about the massacre in Bosnia, which was 30 years ago to the day. Anyway, nonetheless, brought it all back to the more happy feels of classics, Father and Son. I mean, probably his best song ever, probably one of the best songs ever. If you want to sing out was a bit of a surprise. That is from the Harold and Maude soundtrack. It's not on some of his best ofs, but it's not on a proper Cat album that I can think off the top of my head. And then Wild World and Peace Train to finish. Now, by this point, probably after Father and Son, every time his roadie came on to replace his guitar, he was going, oh, we've got to rush, set limits and all that. And of course, being told to rush meant that he spent time talking about rushing instead of just playing the next song. So he did wonder at one point whether he would be able to play both Wild World and Peace Train, or if it'd get cut off. But he got through them both, and they were fantastic. Peace Train, again, completely different arrangement from the original. Wild World, very much like the original. So he mixes things up, but not too much. It doesn't alienate the audience, and it doesn't completely play to them either. So there were big songs missing, Oh Very Young, Morning Is Broken, not missed by me on that one. And like I said, the early songs like Matthew and Son. But again, for an hour-long set, really good. And I would very, very happily see him do a full set again sometime. Now, who does that leave? Oh, yeah, that bloke I saw once before. It's Neil Young. Yeah. Alrighty, now, if anyone went a bit weird with Yusuf / Cat, here, officially, who I saw wasn't Neil Young, it was Neil Young and the Chrome Hearts. Now, I believe they have one album out, which they didn't play anything from, by the way. So therefore, everything is either a Neil Young song or a Neil Young and Crazy Horse cover, or a CSNY cover. A couple of those come up later on, which is mad. It's the one thing I don't like about Setlist. It's a very useful tool, but things like this are just stupid. These are all Neil Young songs. Okay, that's it. Fantastic set. But before I get to this set, here's that tale of when I first saw him when I was 8 and he stormed off stage. Because I know you want to know. I don't really know the story, even though I was there and quite close. But he was doing an acoustic solo set and then was going to come back on with the band. But 5 songs into that solo set, somebody, as the story goes, threw something that smacked him in the head, allegedly a 10-cent coin, which is pretty hefty in NZ money, it's not a tiny little thin dime. Okay, so if that whacked you on the head, you would be pissed off. Anyway, off he went, and he wasn't going to come back on until he was apologized to by the culprit. So security came on stage and started swearing at the owners and saying, "If you don't come up here, you're going to fucking get murdered," and stuff like that, which was very exciting for an 8-year-old to hear. Don't know what my mum thought. She was there, obviously. It wasn't by myself on that occasion. But anyway, he did come back with the band, and then they played a storming electric set for what felt like ages. Anyway, none of that happened. It was much more chill on this occasion, 36 years later. And I spoke about Cat being a bit of a bridge between Van and Neil. He did that in another way as well as the music. Now, Van was really slick and smooth and well dressed. Come the other end of the night, Neil is none of those things. He's rough and shoddy and raw. They're both great in their own ways. So Cat was in between those things. You see what I mean? Anyway, we open with Ambulance Blues from On the Beach. And this is where I hinted at the slight sound issues with the beginning and ending of the sets. We missed the first line of the song because his mic wasn't on. Apart from that, I love Ambulance Blues, but I'm not sure about it as an opener. But, it's quite slow and languid. But great lyrics, and any doubts that the crowd weren't on side to kick it off with were allayed by the pissing in the wind line, which gets everybody. So that was nice. And then we followed up with another quite long, slow song with Cowgirl in the Sand. I mean, that is just an epic classic, and they did it brilliantly, which isn't to say that it was perfect. Pretty much nothing they played was perfect, but that's the beauty of Neil. Now, Be the Rain is one of, I think, only 2 songs I didn't know from a set, and like the other one, comes from the Greendale album in 2003, which is kind of a concept album that I've always meant to have a listen to, but never quite go around to. But I enjoyed that immensely. And then 2 of his early solo singles, When You Dance I Can Really Love, which made it all the way to number 93 back in 1970 as the second single from After the Gold Rush, and Cinnamon Girl, of course, which was, again, not a big single, hit 55. And I always thought that was the start of his solo career pre-CSNY. So a few years ago, I found out that actually it was only released after he'd become much more famous as part of that supergroup. So that's a fun fact for you. Anyway, great versions of those, and then fucking up. He basically flipped between 2 eras, the sort of classic late 60s, early 70s era, and the very late 80s into mid 90s periods, which are, I would say, both his commercial and artistic peaks. So it was a pretty fan-friendly set from Neil. You never quite know what you're going to get with him, what mood he's going to be in, or how deep he's going to get with his selection. So no complaints there either. Again, Sun Green, I said, is Greendale, and I couldn't tell you much about the song now, but I enjoyed it at the time. Southern Man, another classic After the Gold Rush track. And then the acoustic section, which again ties back to Cat. Neil and the Damage Done, as it says, it's just Neil and his guitar and 65,000 other people singing along. Harvest Moon, even bigger sing along somehow. Although, strangely, somebody in the audience near me after that could play something we know, Neil. Not sure if they were expecting Neil Diamond, but maybe. That confused people all around us. Huh? We've just done, yeah. Anyway, that's audiences for you. Now, looking forward, CSNY cover. It's one of those things that I didn't expect. So I was hearing it, I recognize this, but I can't place what album it's from. And then he sang the title and said, oh, okay. So if he's going to do a CSNY song, you might think he'd do Helpless or Ohio, but no, he did from their later albums. I mean, they only had 3 studio albums, and 2 of them are the later albums that nobody really pays much attention to. I'll get to the other one in a bit. And then After the Gold Rush. special treat because he hadn't played it on the tour before, or indeed, as it says here, with this band before. And that is again, we've had a run of some of the great songs ever written on this night, and that's just another one on the list. Back to the 90s for Love to Burn, another cracking Crazy Horse old song. And speaking of Crazy Horse, Hanging in My Mind, which I was really happy to hear, but less happy when I realized from the reviews that he was about to do Like a Hurricane and then change his mind at the last minute. As it turned out, it was probably a good decision. And then, yeah, ending the main set with a couple more acoustic numbers, Name of Love from CSNY's American Dream album, which nobody loves and few people like. I do actually like it, and I like that song. And it exposed maybe the fragility that's in Neil's voice now to a degree, but it still sounded beautiful. And then Old Man, written when he was not old and sung now when he is. And in the intervening years, it's, again, it only gets better. So a great main set, and then back on to the encores in a second. But first of all, two things. The Chrome Hearts, should mention them. They're not Crazy Horse, but they're damn good. And they play, it's a similar feel to Crazy Horse, but with some youngsters, and then Spooner Oldham, Spooner Old Man Ham, on various keyboard instruments, giving you the generations on stage in front of you, let's put it that way. But they played perfect Neil Young music. So no complaints having them and not the horse on board for this. As for Neil himself, I mean, he sounded good. He was wailing away on guitars as he does, and didn't say an awful lot to the audience. There was a few, thanks for being here, folks, and thanks for coming down, and hey, having a good times. It's pretty much the extent of it. Encore Time, Throw Your Hatred Down from Mirrorball, which was probably the last of his great 90s albums, the one he did with Pearl Jam. I tried desperately to use as a gateway drug into modern bands at the time and failed miserably. Still like that album though. I still like that song. And then Rockin' in the Free World, which is, yeah, I mean, I got given the Freedom cassette for Christmas '89, the same year that we saw him. We saw him, I think, in April, and Christmas was in December, as it tends to be. So it was a bit of a gap, but obviously that opens and closes with different versions of Rockin' in the Free World. So you can tell that's another lifelong favorite pretty much for me. And as noted here, there were 3 false endings, and circling from the first line of Ambulance Blues being inaudible to the last false ending being not entirely inaudible, but not heard through the PA because he was switched off because he hit the 10:30 curfew. Yeah, that's a full 2 and a bit hour set. So fair chunk longer than what he played at Glastonbury a week or two before. And yeah, bloomin' good stuff, to put it mildly. All right. Thanks to Setlist FM for helping me remember just about everything I wanted to say about that night of music. Wonderful stuff, and hopefully there's someone to see again similar time next year and maybe slightly less hot conditions. Now, I have to mention again that this was the Friday night, Friday the 11th. Stevie Wonder played the Saturday, and the Sunday was meant to be Jeff Lynne ELO's final gig ever. But of course, sadly, Jeff's health prevented that from happening. So the bill with Stephen Wood and the Doobie Brothers and everybody else who was going to be playing alongside them just got cancelled with them, which is very sad. But as I said on my Aussie tribute the other week, at least he's still with us. I guess, it's a bit of a trade-off, but sad ending to the run of this year's gigs, but hopefully he's doing better now and has a few good years left to enjoy retirement. Meanwhile, the night that I was actually at, absolutely perfect. 3 legends, all performing brilliantly. What more could you ask for, really? yeah, if you get a chance to see any of those three, I would strongly advise taking it. Great stuff all around. And speaking of that, there's now related stuff floating around my head for you to check out, which may have a bit less constant chatting from me. Might not, depends. I have no idea what's going to be there. Anyway, either way, I would just say thank you for watching and bye for now, but I hope not for long.
Acting is reacting. This does not mean acting again.